Welcome to Movers and Shakers on JTV. We're excited to be joined by Disney animator and American film director Saul Blinkoff, who we're speaking to from LA. Saul Blinkoff began his career as an animator for the Walt Disney Studios, working on hit films including Pocahontas, Mulan and Tarzan. He then switched drawing for directing in Hollywood and co-directed the animated feature Kronk's New Groove starring David Spade. In addition to his incredible work at Disney, Saul has also directed a number of high-profile national commercials, including Dunkin' Donuts and Subway. Saul, can I start by asking you, what first ignited your interest in animation?
I remember I was 11 years old and I was in the movie theater watching E.T. and I was mesmerized. And I tapped my mom and I said, "Mom, that is what I want to do when I grow up." She's like, "What, you want to leave planet Earth on a spaceship?" I'm like, "No, Mom, I want to be a filmmaker. I want to be a director." I remember I got my brother, my sister, kids in the neighborhood together. Every weekend I would make little short films, murder movies, monster movies. We'd make fake blood out of ketchup, a little firecracker explosions. I was going to be a director. But you see, I had another love, another passion. I loved to draw. And I didn't really know how I was going to balance my drawing and my filmmaking. And then I was in 11th grade and I saw The Little Mermaid. And when I saw that, I said, "That is what I want to do, Mom." She's like, "What, you want to fall in love with a fish?" I'm like, "No, I want to be an animator at Disney." Because animation combines my two loves, my love of filmmaking, my love of drawing, put them together, animation. And that's when I had my goal. I had my dream. I wanted to be a Disney animator.
Can you tell us a bit about the movies that you've worked on?
I went to a design school in Columbus, Ohio that Disney specifically recruits from and worked very hard to try to get into an internship with Disney. I submitted a portfolio the first time, I got rejected. Second time, rejected. Third time, I made it. I was on an internship at the Walt Disney Studios in Orlando, Florida. At the end of my internship, we found out we're going to be the first interns to actually work on a movie. We got to work on the movie Pocahontas, and that was the first movie I got to animate on. From there, I went on to work on The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Mulan, and Tarzan. It was an incredible time to be at the studio.
Are any of the characters that you've animated based on anyone you know?
Throughout my career at the studio, there's definitely certain characters that I remember being absolutely so exciting to work on. One of my favorite was Shang in Mulan. He's the one that sang, "Let's get down to business," and just an awesome character. He was a leader, he took responsibility, and it was an amazing thing.
You let your kids do voiceovers on some of the movies you work on, including the upcoming movie The Jungle Book. Are they easy to work with?
My wife Marion and I have 4 kids, and we noticed our kids love to perform, always singing in front of the mirror, acting out things, lip syncing. And I remember my wife taking my oldest daughter, Mihira, to an audition when she was a young child, I think 4 or 5 years old. And she just lit up the room. She loved it, and she ended up doing a voice in a Disney show called Phineas and Ferb. And it was just an awesome entree for our family into voiceover. And many people think, "Oh, Saul, you're a director, you work in animation, I'm sure you have an in to get your kids into movies," and that is absolutely not true. I'm just a dad. When I take them to the audition, I don't even tell the people auditioning that I work in animation. I'm just a dad taking my kids to an audition just like everyone else. Interestingly enough, our son Asher is 6.5 years old, and he had an audition once for a movie, Hotel Transylvania 2, and he booked it. Out of hundreds of kids, our son booked this movie, and it was really exciting. He loved it. He's the main kid in this movie. He's got red hair, and he's got a really cute voice, and he does a great job in the movie. And the movie stars Adam Sandler, Andy Samberg, Selena Gomez. It's a really exciting project, and sometimes I do work with kids myself, directing Winnie the Pooh movies. I worked with kids overseas and here, and directing kids is definitely challenging because they really never sit still. So I'll be directing a scene and I'll give the kid the line that he has to say. And as he's in the middle of saying his line, he'll all of a sudden start talking to me about soccer that he had yesterday. And I'll be like, "Don't forget, we're actually doing a movie here right now." Their just attention is all over the place, but it's ultimately very rewarding.
How is technology changing film production and animation in general?
Technology absolutely changes daily in our field, but I would say as a storyteller, it really doesn't affect what I do. I am a director and a filmmaker, but ultimately a storyteller. And the structure of story hasn't changed since cavemen were making drawings on walls. As a director, I'm really involved in creating the story, working with writers to make sure the structure of the story is solid and that the themes are something that I believe in as a filmmaker, as a father, and I take that responsibility very seriously. But technology changes the way animation is made. Animators will work on a computer and they'll work with one kind of software, and the next year it'll be a different kind of software. But there's one thing I always tell animators, and that is draw, draw, draw. If your foundation in animation is learning how to draw and draw from life, then no matter what technology changes, you'll always have the foundation to be able to understand the figure and 3 dimensions.
What advice would you give to aspiring artists, animators, and film producers?
Many times students will ask me, what advice can you give me for my career? And it really comes down to one thing. I remember when I was trying to get into Disney, I found out the greatest Disney animator who ever lived is a guy named Glenn Keane. I mean, this guy could draw like unbelievably. He designed and animated The Little Mermaid, The Beast and Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Tarzan. The guy was awesome. And I thought that when I was in college, if I could draw with the pencil that Glenn Keane draws with, then I could be as good as him. Because everyone knew in college that Glenn Keane drew with a very certain kind of pencil, and it was very difficult to get it. So I tracked down the company that made that pencil. I called them up on the phone, and they actually told me they just went out of business, literally like that week. I said, can you send me some of those pencils? They said, we don't have any left. We've sold them all to an animator named Glenn Keane. Glenn Keane bought all the boxes of all those pencils. So when I started at the Disney Studios years later, I remember going into Glenn's office. The very first time he's teaching me how to draw Pocahontas. And as he's drawing for me, I'm distracted. I can't even look at what he's doing because all I'm doing is staring at that pencil. And he could tell I'm distracted. He said, what's wrong? I said, is that the pencil? Is that the pencil? You've drawn all these characters? He's like, yeah. I said, can I see it? And he can tell that I'm enamored. He looks at me and says, Saul, it is not the pencil that makes the animator. He said, you know what it is? And I said, what? He pointed on his desk to a little piece of paper. It's a piece of paper that had 2 words written on it. And they're words that he had learned from Disney animators years earlier that worked on Pinocchio, Bambi, and all the way back to Walt Disney himself. And here's what it said: be sincere. Glenn said to me, in anything that you do in animation, or in life for that matter, be sincere. Put yourself into it, and ultimately the results will be great.
You also have a very strong Jewish identity. Have you always had it? And if not, what made it grow?
I was really fortunate to be raised in a home where Judaism was very prevalent. My parents, my mom made a beautiful Shabbat dinner every week, and my father did Kiddush, and we did the Birkat HaMazon after the meal. We took trips to Israel, but ultimately as I got older, I wouldn't have considered myself a religious person at all. I remember thinking Judaism for me is whatever my parents did. And as I got older, I got a trip to Israel, and I remember asking myself on that trip, wait a minute, how do I fit into Judaism? How does my Jewish identity affect what I do? And I remember exploring Judaism for myself, and then as a man making decisions for how I wanted to incorporate Judaism into my life. And I can tell you, even as a filmmaker, I started seeing myself now as a Jewish filmmaker. While working on some of these Disney movies, sometimes in the back of my head, I think to myself, Disney artists always like to hide things in movies. So I remember I was directing a Winnie the Pooh movie, and in one of the scenes, I thought to myself, you know what I need to do? I need to hide something. When no one was looking, I sharpened the pencil, and next to Winnie the Pooh's doorway, I hid a mezuzah. I drew a mezuzah in the movie. I thought, you know what? Now he's not Winnie the Pooh, he's Winnie the Jew. Another movie I directed was Kronk's New Groove, the sequel to Emperor's New Groove. And I remember reading the script and it said, Kronk gets married. I thought, perfect, let's give him a chuppah, the Jewish wedding canopy. So I remember getting my wedding album that my wife picked out the calla lily flowers next to our chuppah, and I gave that to the art director. And when you watch the movie now, Kronk steps on the glass, Mazel Tov, it's in the movie.